Okay.
Although you can remember.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to invite you all to take your seats and we can get started here. Thank you all so much for joining us. My name is Jasper Dent. I'm the events coordinator here at McNally Robinson in Saskatoon. This event is being held on Treaty 6 territory. This is the land of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Dakota, Nakota, and Lakota, and homeland of the Métis Nation. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the Saskatoon launch of The Door at the End of Everything by Lynda Monahan, published by SHADOWPAW Press. I'd like to thank both Lynda and our host for this event, Dave Margocius, for being here tonight, as well as Edward Willett at SHADOWPAW Press for helping us make this event happen. Just to note that this event is being live streamed, so there's a web camera up to your right here. It's focused up here. We'll not be filming the audience, but it will pick up on your phone if it rings during the event. So now is a great time to check that you silenced or turned that off. Now I'd like to introduce our author and host for the evening. Lynda Monahan is the author of the poetry collections A Slow Dance in the Flames, What My Body Knows, Verge, and a co-written collection, A Beautiful Stone. She facilitates a number of creative writing workshops and has been writer-in-residence at St. Peter's College Facilitated Retreat, Balfour Collegiate in Regina, and the Prince Albert Public Library, and writer on the wards at Victoria Hospital in Prince Albert. She's editor of several books, including With Just One Reach of Hands, an anthology of the writing of the Canadian Mental Health Association's Writing for Your Life group, which she also facilitates. Dave Margocius, our host for this evening, lives near Saskatoon. He's published 20 books of fiction, nonfiction, and poetry, and has been an editor on newspapers, magazines, and of books. His most recent novel is A Simple Carpenter. I'd like to invite you all to give them both a very warm welcome.
Hello, everybody. He stole my thunder. I was going to tell you all about Lynda. This is her. In the interests of full disclosure, I should tell you that Lynda and I are not only friends, but I'm one of her biggest fans. I've edited several of her books, including this one. And I even wrote one of the blurbs on the back of this book, which I will read to you now. So save you the trouble of having to look at it later. This is a terrific poetry collection. With a light lyrical touch, the poems explore mental illness, not in a clinical way, but from the inside, as well as aging, grief, loneliness, and loss. The poems are infused with lovely imagery and a sense of hope. And I think that's all I will say, because the poems really speak for themselves. So please give a warm welcome to Lynda Monahan. I should though mention that after she reads, probably for a couple of hours, if you're not asleep at the end of that, she and I are going to have a conversation, which I guarantee will be interesting.
Well, do you think I'm going to put them to sleep? Thank you, Dave. I would like to begin by also acknowledging that we are on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional land of the Treaty 6 First Nations and homeland of the Métis people. I want to thank Ed Willett and SHADOWPAW Press for believing in my work and for publishing such a fine-looking book. SHADOWPAW has been wonderful to work with, and I'm grateful. The cover art is, hold this up for you to have a look, but the cover art is by the talented Regina artist, Marilyn Nelson, and it's titled Good to Be Alive Today. And I think her painting is a perfect fit for this collection of poems, especially those that speak of looking to the light in dark places. So thank you to Marilyn for allowing her powerful painting to be used as the cover art for the book. Thank you to my amazing editor, Dave Margocious. Where did Dave go? There he is. Dave has edited, as he said, 4 of my 5 full-length collections, and I greatly value Dave's expert editorial eye, his constant encouragement, and his friendship. And thank you for hosting this too, Dave. Thank you to my family. I'm not going to look at them because I'll cry. Thank you to my family who believe in me and this poetry thing I do. Their love and support mean everything. And lastly, thanks to all of you for coming out this evening to help me launch the door at the end of everything. This book is dedicated to my godson, Jonathan Lindsay Graham. It reads, Johnny, you never let any closed door stop you. You opened every one. Johnny is an inspiration for hope and courage in so many ways. Johnny played the bagpipes. He plays the bagpipes for the RCMP pipe and drum band in Saskatoon. In Regina, sorry. And he played for my launch in Regina a couple of nights ago. So it was really a wonderful addition to the reading, having Johnny play the bagpipes. Johnny has Asperger's. He's struggled his whole life, but he truly does not let any doors stay closed. So it was a real privilege for me to dedicate this book to Johnny. And he'd asked me years ago, Auntie Lynda, when are you going to dedicate a book to me? So it makes me really happy that I was able to do this for Johnny. So The Door at the End of Everything was written largely during the recent years. I was writer-in-residence at the Victoria Hospital in Prince Albert, working often on the adult and youth mental health wards. I worked on a number of the wards in the hospital, including palliative, the medical wards, the 2 seniors facilities attached to the hospital. But I found that where I think I was needed most was on the adult and youth mental health wards, because so often people would be sitting there staring at the walls with nothing to fill their time a lot of times. So I spend a lot of time on the mental health wards writing with the patients there. So also, as well as working on the adult youth mental health wards, I facilitate a Writing for Your Life group with the Canadian Mental Health Association. And I've done that for over 12 years now, I think just about 13 years. And it's become an important part of my life, working and writing with people with mental health problems. And I don't feel separate from it at all. I don't write as an observer, but as a participant. I often write about my own struggles, and it was really important to me that I not write as just an observer, but that it's very much a part of who I am, working with people with mental health issues. And I don't think anybody escapes mental health issues. And I think it's getting talked about more than it ever was in the past, when people were sort of hidden away or they didn't talk about it, right? So it was important to me. And it's my desire that these poems give voice to those living with mental illness and speak to not only the suffering, but to the hope and courage that is so clearly there as well. I wanted the poems to move through the darkness of ignorance and hiding and into the light where there can be help and growing. So that's a little bit about my motivation, I guess, for writing the poems in The Door at the End of Everything. And the book is in 3 sections. Can you hear me okay back there? Good. Okay. The first section are mostly personal poems. And the first section is titled Pulling Fire. I've always written a lot about fire, and I'm very interested in fire. We're married a man who worked fighting forest fires for a living. So fire to me can be dangerous, but it can be warm and welcoming. It has many different personalities, I think. So this poem is called Pulling Fire. She thought once she would burn the whole world with her poems, truth like torches touching the tops of spruce with shouts and sparks full of a furious light. Breath of a dragon poems pinned to the night, bent nails glowing coal red as she heaved memories one atop the other, the blaze swelling, flames shocking up, shadows rising like raised arms in the rough heat of her lung-burning longing, smoke ghosting around her, that desire to see fire kindled, a need like breathing, her body wreathed in darkness, a scorch in her heart, heat under cold stone. When Jerry Hill was poet laureate for Saskatchewan, what he did was he put out a number of quotes from the work of Saskatchewan poets through the Saskatchewan Writers Guild. And the idea was that you could take these quotes and then use them as writing prompts. So there are a number of poems in this collection that come from that exercise. And this is a quote from Judith Krause's poem, A History of Shirts. 30 years of your brother's life hanging in a cedar-lined closet under the back stairs. And that's from Judith Krause's poem, A History of Shirts. Closet space. Brother, I don't go looking anymore in the dark closets of memory. Don't go digging through those musty boxes for the moth-eaten remains of all the old sad stories. I'll never rid myself of those memories. Won't drop them off at the Salvation Army back door. Leave them there with the chipped cups and broken kitchen clocks. I've stored them away in the back reaches of my heart where they don't take up all the space they once did. Those years when the loss of you would not let go, and I refused to put anything of you away. I live by the Shell River in the Nesbitt Forest west of Prince Albert. And I often go walking by the Shell River. And one day I came across this graffiti that was written under the arches of the Shell River Bridge. And this poem is titled Graffiti. Through thick snow, I walk by the river this late November afternoon, finding your footprints where they step off into whiteness. And there on the concrete arches of the Shell River Bridge, where you drew a dark-haired girl, you left a dark scrawl. I am no lover, she hasn't the prettiest eyes. No one has seen you, and beneath the bridge the river is a sheet of dark water scrawled with thin ice. I don't know who or where you are, but I can't forget that message is all they found. It leaves its white breath in me. This is the poem. I was practicing reading these to my husband earlier today. I said, this is a poem about my dad, but it really isn't. It's a poem about my dad's girlfriend, and it's called Poor Mary. Dad's girlfriend's name was Mary. Poor Mary, people called her. Rumors her husband had hung himself in the basement of the ramshackle old house she lived in on River Street. The kitchen filled to overflowing with soggy cardboard boxes of rotting apples and peaches she had picked up for 50% off at Safeway, fruit flies flitting around our heads like miniature Tinkerbells. Dad stretched out on Mary's scruffy sofa, the living room rife with the eye-watering smell of the heat liniment he used for his sciatica, and from the looks of him, he hadn't shaved or bothered to comb his hair in days. My sister and I maneuvered our way around the Electrolux vacuum cleaner that lay like a tired dog smack in the middle of the crumb-covered carpet, wending our way past a set-up ironing board mountained with laundry that appeared to be a permanent fixture next to the TV. Mary in a bathrobe wanting to know what we wanted, which was nothing more than to see how Dad was doing. I can't remember anything my sister or I said, or if Dad said anything at all. 5 minutes and we had what we came for, climbed back over the Electrolux, waved away the fruit flies, and were gone. There really were a lot of fruit flies in that house. So the second section of the book is titled Saying the Unsayable Things. And here's where I move away from more personal poems to my experience of being a writer on the wards, on the mental health wards at the Victoria Hospital. And this poem is called To Say There Is Poetry. To say there is poetry in the bright, impossible grin of the young man who can neither hear nor speak, a young man who ranges the ward in a paper hat that declares him St. Patrick. To say there is poetry in the random words and symbols he painstakingly puts to paper, in the bone-thin face of a tiny woman caught in the cage of dementia, who sits primly, her eyes shining, head poised like a delicate bird when she tells me, I am so lost, my family doesn't know I'm here. Or in the shuffle of a middle-aged woman who touches the small pearls at my earlobes and says, I don't allow myself pretty things. In the whey-faced man crouched in a corner, nursing his coffee, his eyes a wilderness of infinite gray, despair a garment he wears as surely as his hospital blue pajamas. In each man and each woman here, in all their vulnerability and humanity, in this place, there is poetry everywhere. And there really is. This next poem, The Door at the End of Everything, is the title of the book and the title of this sequence of poems. These are the Door at the End of Everything are little small snapshots of people on the wards. And they're short poems, tanka, 5-line poems, a Japanese form of poetry called tanka. And I purposely wanted these to be little small poems because life on the mental health ward is so pared down. It's like pared right down to, humanity is pared right down to its essence. So the poems needed to be small and tight and pared down in that same way. So these are the poems, The Door at the End of Everything. The hall is long as the beige walls, as the days spent behind the locked door at the end of everything. Their stories are bred, broken, and shared. Truth is the wine they pass round the table. Mad is compact, an everyday word. It fits into songs. Mad Hatter, mad idea. Are you mad? These poems grow thinner, peeled diamond willow walking sticks. On the psych ward, it doesn't matter how big your house is. Life here is no chess game. Kings are no different from pawns. In the TV room, the 1,000-piece puzzle takes hours to put together, always that one piece missing. And it really was. There was a 1,000-piece puzzle that never had that last piece. He lives in the video game Mortal Kombat, where he is the hero Scorpion, not belonging to any part of the world that's real. Today, they took away the drinking water. The new girl, bulimic, gorgeous even on that. Thin women were skinny bitches. Large women he called cows. At least he was fair, hated us all equally. Sit there, he tells me, tapping my shoulder. The nurse jumps. No touching, she warns him, and he backs away from me. It wasn't police brutality gave me these bruises, shows me his purpling arms. Not their fault I fought them. It was me not wanting to go where I know now I needed to be. This is jail, she writes in her journal, the sick ward. She means to spell psych, but it's really the same. I wonder, she says, how they got that word schizophrenia. How did they name normal? They label me like dangerous goods, just so you know what you're dealing with, what there is inside of me. They discount whatever I say as crazy talk, tossing my words aside, useless as dollar bin deals. There were a few people there who were getting electroshock therapy, ECT. Ankles bound, leather restraints, wrists tied tight. I am a wild tiger captured for this zoo. Such heaviness, a weight settling on my chest, a blacksmith's anvil, iron against iron. Electric currents that flash and sizzle, in his head a thunderstorm, then nothing but the dark. I get ECT, returned home like the dry cleaning, my mind pressed flat as a pair of black dress pants. After the treatment, it's like there's been a rain, the way it washes it all away, as if the dust alone held everything together. I also spent some time, there's a recreation room where we would do mandalas. I don't know if you're familiar with mandalas, but you draw a circle and then you can put inside what you care about, drawings or writings. And so we did some work on mandalas. So this is about that. She writes inside her mandala, broken people are more real. We know things. She draws a tangle of shining, fragile filaments like spun glass, glittery and enmeshed, wound so tight, so tight. He names himself Fat Face, Ugly Face, paints a gold butterfly. Beautiful, I tell him. He writes Fat, Ugly Butterfly. She paints purple loosestrife, growing wild and beautiful, choking out everything that gets in her way. She colors a black butterfly fluttering into the dark night of her eyes. Inside his mandala, there is a silver arc of moon, quiet hills of shadowed snow, 4 gray wolves at his mind's edge singing. He wrote it all, a story he had not shared with anyone, thought I might drown in those words. Instead, I'm treading water, learning how to swim. So proud to call himself a writer. Of all the names he's been called in life at last, this one worth saying. That's the door at the end of everything. And I had mentioned that I also facilitate a Writing for Your Life group, and the people there mean a great deal to me. And these are some of the stories that they tell me or that I've observed. Quote 2. This is for Randy. He got a new coat every year. Didn't know who gave it, but every winter there it was, warm, fleece-lined. Says it was the most amazing, fine thing anyone had ever given him, this gift of warmth to wrap himself in. When he was wandering 40 below Calgary alleys, digging for cigarette butts in garbage cans or bumming quarters in the big boy parking lot. And you know, he said, back then, those coats were the closest damn thing I had to anything I'd call a home. This is Dwight. Sometimes I think he is the word lonely, that loneliness has burrowed into his marrow, that there is a fishhook of loneliness embedded in him. Hunched in the corner in an old army coat, greasy ball cap pulled low over his eyes, he sits nursing the dark grace of coffee, not wanting to go out into that endless freezing fall of rain. He stays until there is quite simply no other choice but to go. I meet with my Writing for Your Life group every second Wednesday, and I always bring cookies, and it doesn't matter how big the box of cookies is, we power through those cookies in 5 minutes. So this is just something to remember. Sharing a bag of store-bought cookies on a winter Wednesday morning with a handful of guys at the drop-in center isn't a poem. Even though they dig into those cookies like it was their last meal, even though there is a ritual to it, Ian sitting next to me, always the one to open the peak freens or Oreos. Even though this place is the very heart of life to every one of them, and it's home in the sense that here they can grab a cup of coffee or a nap, and it's where they feel cared for when life is just too difficult and they've lost who it is they're supposed to be. This couldn't be poetry, even though they caught the bus to be here on this frigid morning, stamping their frozen feet in rundown running shoes that do nothing to keep out the cold. Poetry? No. Just something to remember when you feel life isn't adding up, the way love can sometimes exactly equal a bag of store-bought cookies shared with friends. Sticking together. The last section of the book is titled These Little Things That Save Us, because there is much of many of the poems in this collection are dark. It was really important to me that there be light too, because sometimes in the darkest places, there is light. There are these moments of beauty in the darkness. And I think sometimes it's little things that save us, the smallest things that bring us the most joy. So it's really important to me that I write down into the darkness and yet right up into the light as well, because it's always there, that light and that beauty. So these little things that save us are about hope. Speaking. These frozen weeks of deepest wind chill, struggling through the belly-deep banks of hard-crusted snow, at dusk the deer come. I sit cross-legged on the carpet by the garden door, watching them haloed by the sun's low leaving, as they nibble soft-mouthed the seeds they share with the chickadees. The smallest comes curious right up to the window glass, her dark eyes seeking, and she stays there for the longest time, looking deep into me. And what she sees there, I don't know. But I know what I see in her soft gaze, gentleness and a quiet grace, something I wish was mine. My husband and I stayed in these little cabins up near Hudson Bay when he was working up there. And there was a nest of starlings above the door. This is called Nest 2. Above the cabin door, a nest of newborn starlings. I move quietly, slowly opening and closing the door so as not to disturb them. Why would the parents put their babies so close to where we come and go? Aren't they afraid for them, I ask you? And you tell me, I think they trust us. Trust, something it's taken me a lifetime to learn, that the people I love will not abandon me, that the nest I call home is safe, even if that the nest I call home is safe, even if the door gets sometimes slammed. There is still the knowledge that the little ones are going to be okay, that their mother will always come back home. But determined not to cry. Okay, this poem is called No Denying. I think anybody who is maybe around my age might be able to relate to this one for sure. No denying. At this age, she is the way dusk descends into night. Not quite dark, but you know she's getting there. On the summer sand, she sees the young girls with their waterfalls of hair, golden and light-filled as a good morning. She watches them leap the little waves, sun glinting on tan shoulders, and here she sits on her beach towel in her one-piece bathing suit. She thinks of dusk, the amber light hushed and shadowy, such gentle words for her time of day, eventide, vespers, gloaming. Ah, but once she was one of them, her young self leaning into the long days of summer, bikini clad atop a young man's shoulders, when she too was radiant as morning light. Now she is these slower hours, beautiful really, the way twilight arrives, settling down into the nearing dark. It is not yet over, but there's no denying the time of day. And I have one more poem that I'm going to share with you. And that's the title poem for this last section. It's called These Little Things That Save Us. Ah, summer, come wander the sun-bleached shore. Sandpipers scurry the strand, gulls sculling in a watercolor sky. Bend now to gather bits of beach glass, emerald greens and bottle blues. Lift them to the light, let them share with you their many secrets, frail shells and driftwood like an old man's bones. Wade into the gasp of water, knee-deep in this northern lake, 10 minnows kissing your toes, a pebble in your hand, these little things that save us. Thank you so much. I want her.
Well, that was a lovely reading, Linda.
Thank you so much, Dave.
I'm going to put you on the spot. I hope you don't mind. What is it that made you cry in that poem?
You think about that. I guess because the poem mentions that the mother will come back home. And I lost my mother young. That would be why. Sometimes I can read it, I'm okay, sometimes not.
That's a wound that never heals.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what is it about the mental illness that attracts you so much? Why did you want to spend, first of all, why did you want to spend so much time with those people? And why did you want to write poems?
Because of the vulnerability, I think, because we all have a role in life. I think something that we're drawn to, and this is just something I feel really drawn to. I think because of my own life experience, and because of my own life experience, it mattered to me that I do this. My own brother took his life at a fairly young age, and this just seemed to be something I could do to help others and to heal myself too.
I think that your poems have helped these people.
I do believe so. Yeah, I mean, I took the book to my Writing for Your Life group and read them the poems, and they felt really pleased, to some of them, to see their names there, and they felt heard, and that was what was really important to me. That like the door at the end of everything poems, the little short poems that are about the life on the ward, those are not made into high poetry or anything like that. They're just exactly what I experienced and what I saw. So
Snapshots, really.
yes, yeah, and it felt to me like an opportunity to give a voice to that. So much of mental health is often hidden away and never talked about, and I think it's important that it is.
Did any of the people you were dealing with feel that you were intruding in their lives?
Never had that experience ever. No, they're my friends.
Tell me what brought you to poetry in the first place?
Hmm.
When did you start writing poetry and why?
I've always written. I don't remember a time when I didn't write. I was writing when I was maybe 10 and 12 years old. My aunt had sent me a few pieces that I had written back then. But what really got me going with writing, what really lit a fire under me, was that I took a class from Lorna Crozier. Um, I think it was in my 40s somewhere, second year U of S class. And she made me realize that me, ordinary Lynda Monahan, who lives in the forest up near Prince Albert, had a story worth telling. She made me realize that what I had to say mattered, and that maybe other people might find it interesting, or it might matter to them too. So she did that for me.
And now you're doing the same with other people.
Now, I hope so. Yeah, I do hope so. I really enjoyed a career as a teacher of creative writing. I've done a lot of workshops and classes, and it's been hugely gratifying to see other people um, fall in love with poetry and with writing too.
And your work on the mental health wards, I'm sure, uh, made many people feel that they matter.
Yeah, that would certainly be my hope. And a lot of times, like I read down in Regina a couple of nights ago, and one of the questions that was asked of me is why it was important for me to do this, and how I felt that like did I just sit and write the poems and come up with wonderful images and things like that. But I didn't do that. What I felt I was doing was attending. And I feel that's the most important thing I do as a writer, is just pay attention and listen, and hear what's being told to me and attend. And I think a lot of people on the wards don't get that opportunity to be really heard. So that's what I try to do, I think, as a poet, is just listen to everything, pay attention.
So what are you listening to now?
What I'm listening to now is I'm just beginning a new project, which isn't new. It's still really a continuation of these little things that save us. It has to do with small things that give us hope. And they can be the most tiny things. And that really intrigues me. The idea of the smallest things can mean so much and have so much more meaning to them than you might think they do.
So there's a new poetry collection in the works.
Well, someday. Yeah. I hate to call it anything except maybe half a dozen poems right now. Mhm.
Well, everything starts small and
That's
grows.
right, small things.
So I'm wondering if there are any questions out here for them.
I have one. I'm thinking of the participants in your classes and the 12 participants. How do they approach the classes do you offer them? Do they attend willingly? Or is there some reluctance? How do you draw them in? How do you draw them out into their own creativity? How do you do that?
You mean on the boards?
Yeah.
What I would do is I went in with a bunch of journals and pens, and I would just sit down with people and tell them who I was and what I was doing there. And so often people are just so wanting to have somebody to talk to.
Okay.
So we would start, I'd say, do you want to write something? And, often once we got talking a little bit, then we would just start. I would just give them a simple writing prompt if they didn't have something already to write about. And so over time, I got to know people as they came and went on the wards, and it sort of happened that way.
And need to coach them or draw them out. You found that the writing, the thoughts were there, ready to be expressed.
I think so.
Yeah.
Largely, yes.
Yeah.
And doing the mandalas was a big help too.
Yes.
Because that's just really, it's a fun thing to do with the mandalas. And one thing I'm really very proud of, and that I think is a wonderful outcome from having worked on the wards, is that, that was what I wanted to say. The title, The Door at the End of Everything, is because in the mental health ward in Prince Albert, at the hospital, is in this long underground tunnel that leads down to a locked door. And it was very gray and dismal, and the ceiling leaked really badly at one time, and there were puddles. So you would literally walk down this long gray hall through these puddles to get to this locked door. Well, how unwelcoming is that? But it's not that way anymore. It's been fixed. We have poetry and paintings hanging on the walls in the tunnel now, so that even on the way to that locked door, it looks more welcoming. So that came, some of those art pieces that we worked on, the mandalas and the poems, are hanging on the walls in the hall.
What's on the other side of the wall?
That's where the mental health ward is. It's locked door. Yeah, it's a locked.
Any other questions?
I've never heard of a writer in residence at
That would be helpful. My hearing isn't the best.
Okay, I had never heard of a writer in residence in a hospital, and I'm just wondering if this is a thing in other hospitals or just in Prince Albert, or how that all came about.
Oh, that's a really good question. Well, I had heard Shirley Service is a writer in Alberta, and Shirley Service works in the Edmonton hospitals as writer on the boards, as well as Rona Bloom also does a writer in the wards program. And I was really interested in that. I've been teaching a lot of classes, but I wanted to do that so much. So I talked to Shirley, and Shirley told me how she went about it with her little cart full of journals and her pens and what she did. And so I learned a lot from Shirley, and I went to the hospital. And I knew one person who worked at the hospital there in the volunteer coordinator. And I told her what I'd like to do. She'd never heard of anything like that before. That was like nothing the hospital knew anything about. But she said, okay, if you want to do it, but you're going to have to take volunteer training and be a volunteer first. So, okay, I took the volunteer training and I was able to get some help from Commonweal Community Arts, which is an arts-based program that links professional artists with the community in various ways. And so I was able to get a grant through Commonwealth Community Arts, and slowly, slowly, the hospital kind of came on board with Commonwealth coming with me and saying, you know, she can do this, and we got the program going. Yeah, it's a fairly new concept having a writer in residence at the hospitals, but it's, I think, very valuable in lots of ways. Randy Friesen is a surgeon at Prince Albert Hospital, and he really felt it wasn't only valuable for the patients, but also writer on the wards could be helpful for the staff, for the nurses and doctors working there too. So did a little bit of that, but not as much as I would have liked to. That's how it came about.
Thank you.
Further questions? I can bring the microphone to you.
Right behind you.
Hi, Lynda. I just am curious to, when you are writing with the group of people, then how did you go about talking to them about the poems, and were they comfortable from the start? Did you let them know that you were going to be writing some things about them? Like, I'm just curious because it's I think it's just a beautiful story. Anyways, thank you.
Well, what I did is I would take my coffee break and I'd go and sit in the hospital cafeteria, and I would just, because I was attending, because I was listening, everything just, I felt it so much that I had to go and write it down. So I would, you know, I just had to. So that's what I did on my lunch breaks. I would write down these little bits and pieces. And I did talk to, later on, I talked to them about my writing, and I would read to them what they had told me. But everything that was happening was such poetry. And that was my big worry for sure at first, was that, am I taking stories that don't belong to me? But I truly don't feel that way. I truly don't feel, and I made sure that people knew that I was doing this. And it wasn't something I started out intending to do at all. It was just my response to it. And because of my own experience with mental health problems, with, you know, with my brother and my own eating disorder as a young woman, I just felt so involved with it. So yeah, I never felt that any of the people that I work with felt that I was stealing something from them, because I wouldn't.
Any more questions here?
Congratulations, Lynda. Congratulations. That's beautiful work. I love form poetry. And I'm curious about what it is about Tanka that attracts you as opposed to, say, writing haiku or ringa or high fun, which is prose with haiku sort of, not really as a summary, but why that particular form? What do you like about it so much, and what works for you?
Well, I like tanka because it allows you a little bit more room than haiku, because haiku is, of course, just 3 lines. So you get to say just that little bit more in the last 2 lines. And I think that's why, because I like the succinctness of it, but it just gave me a little bit more so that I could take those first 3 lines and sort of riff on them in the last 2 lines. I guess and also I love all forms of Japanese poetry, and actually all things Japanese. Like when I was working on this, even when I read from it, it reminds me so much of Kintsugi and of the Japanese aesthetic, that there's such beauty in broken things, and that it's part of your history, right? So, and that I love that, the whole idea of people. I think we're all sort of broken too, and maybe in our broken places, maybe that's where we're most beautiful. or wood that can be mended with gold. Yeah. Thanks, Dee.
Do we have more questions from the audience here? Trying to find different ways of saying more questions now each time.
Hmm.
Or, yeah.
Hi, Linda.
Hi.
I was wondering, how do you decide how many poems to put into your book? Like,
Well, I had written probably 100 and some poems, and so with that many, I was thinking, okay, there's enough for a collection there. Like anything over maybe 70 poems or so, I think would make up a collection of poetry. First books are sometimes a bit shorter, but Dave helped me pare those down, get rid of the poems that were maybe redundant, and help me shape them so that yeah, so we narrowed the collection down a bit from that point.
so as you were talking, like I know from writing books, there's when you get an editor in, they can bring a different version of what you're trying to say and maybe bring it out. Do you find that happens with your poems, or are they complete once you bring them to the editor?
Hey Dave, I'm gonna let you answer that.
Well, I've done a lot of editing over the years. And, my philosophy of editing is that, well, first of all, that in this case, it's her book. It's not mine, but I'm another set of eyes. And it's amazing. And I'm a writer myself, and I know how short-sighted a writer can get about their own work. So another set of eyes is invaluable. And so I've been another set of eyes for Lynda's poems. And I think I help her bring out the best in them. What do you think?
I would agree with that 100%. Dave helped me, and also, like Dave has been editor of my 4 out of my 5 collections, but he gets what I want to say, and that's really important to have an editor who doesn't try to make your work their work. You know, and I try to do that in my own editing. I remember that, okay, this is their work, and I just want to help them shape the poems and polish the poems as best you can. It's really an amazing thing when you get an editor who gets your voice and Dave knows what I'm trying to say. I really apologize.
Questions.
Hi, Grandma.
Hi.
Have you thought about doing any other types of writing?
Like different genres, you mean? I've done a little bit of fiction writing, a little bit, and a little bit of nonfiction, but I really, poetry is my strength, and I know that. I think I'm just a poet at heart. And so, yeah, so though I've tried some other genres, I'm really a poet.
Oh, yeah.
The question.
And when are we going to write a book together?
I think maybe we should. Yeah. Carter is my great grandson, and he is an up and coming writer himself. So maybe he'll be up here one day. We hope.
More questions? Every time I turn too far. But, okay, excellent.
Hi, Grandma.
Hi, I did.
How hard do you write books?
How hard is it?
Yeah.
Well, for me, it's not hard because I love doing it so much. I love writing so much, and it's how I think I best express myself is through my writing. Is it hard? No, but it can be frustrating sometimes when I want to say something a certain way and it doesn't seem to be happening for me. But it's part of who I am. It's part of grandma.
Excellent.
I have another one. I wondered if you had mentioned going to different wards, and I
Yeah.
wondered if you had spent time on palliative care and if you had done some writing with people there and what that was like.
I absolutely did. Yeah, often working like on the 6th floor, on the palliative floor, I would write with families. Yeah, sometimes it was just a matter of sitting with somebody in palliative, but it would be the families who would come and want to tell their story, want to be able to share their memories often, but often even more than that, it had to do with their frustration with the system sometimes, and they wanted to tell those stories. So again, I largely listened, but I would bring journals too and give them out, and often they would write in the journals, and then the next time I would come, they would share some of their stories with me. Working on the two seniors facilities that are attached to the hospital was also something I spent a fair bit of time doing. And one of the rec coordinators there was a photographer, and she took these wonderful pictures of when people move into a care home, they can only take a few things with them, right? So she would take pictures like of something they were holding, like if it was like the family Bible, or maybe, one woman had like a collection of stuffed cats, so she had a stuffed cat, and she had taken these pictures of the residents with these things that they brought with them that meant something to them. And so I sat with each one of those people and we wrote about what they had brought with them and why it was important to them. And we put through Commonweal, I got a little bit of funding. We were able to put together a collection of those stories that went with the pictures. And then we had a book launch at the nursing home. And in the day center at the hospital, which is for adults who, they have disabilities and they would just come during the daytime, their families would pick them up. We did a collection of recipes, family recipes that they remembered, and stories associated with food. And we did a little collection of little anecdotes and recipes. And we launched that at the day center, and that was a lot of fun too. So it was like all over the place, really, in the hospital, doing various things. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Hi, Don.
Hi there. How's it going?
Okay.
I think you should maybe expand a little bit on the course that you always talk about, is writing a life story, because that relates to palliative care and senior homes.
The writing your life story, the workshops, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I taught I'm still doing one out in Meadow Lake, a course in writing your life story, which is people sharing their stories. Do you mean writing for your life? Are you talking about writing for your life? Writing life stories, yeah. I think are really important, and the seniors, that's very important too. So a lot of seniors wrote their life stories with me as well, in various ways.
We have time for one last question, if anyone would like to. Yeah.
Hi, it's more of a comment. My auntie in Prince Albert did her life story with you, and she had seen on Facebook that I was coming tonight, and she said, "Do you know her?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Tell her thank you."
Who's that?
It's Elsie Betterly.
Oh, okay.
And she's had it printed and given out to all her siblings and nieces and nephews. So
Wonderful.
I never knew that connection until yesterday.
Oh.
So,
Yeah, it's a lot of fun doing that. Everybody gets really into writing their life story. Yeah.
That's a beautiful note to end on. Dave, would you like to close this out here? No.
Just thank you for coming, everybody, and I would like to encourage you all to buy a copy of her book, or maybe several copies. Christmas is coming. Thanks for coming. And thank Oh, and if if you're buying a book, Lynda will be happy to autograph it.